Hello and welcome to a new series I'm doing on Oxygen Not Included that I think I'm going to call Base 911. The basic idea is that you guys send me your bases that are on the verge of collapse, and I try and save them. And we are kicking off the series with quite a bang. This base was sent to me by Looper17 on Reddit, and whoo boy, there is a lot of things going wrong here. So let's just start from the top. What is going wrong with this base? What are the challenges that it faces? What resources do we have to deal with those challenges? And let's start off with the most pressing of all the concerns, which is oxygen. There's virtually no oxygen in his base. We have little pockets of breathable gas, barely breathable gas. Most of this is all in the red. If we go to his sort of western annex, this is all red. In fact, it's weird, but the areas outside of his base have a greater ability to support life than the areas inside of his base. So we're going to have to crack into some of these areas to try and get some oxygen. The only real pocket of oxygen he has left that's part of his base is this one right here. And unfortunately, it's right next to this copper volcano. So a lot of it is, well, as you can see, 93 degrees, which is not a duplicant, not a temperature that duplicants are going to be able to withstand. So a lot of this area is pretty scalding, right? This is not a good color for heat. And so he basically has no oxygen at this point. And he also has very little ways of generating oxygen at this point. He has 30 kilograms of algae left and 0 kilograms of slime. So these fields that he's built of algae terrariums and oxygen diffusers are all useless at this point because there's nothing to run them on. Right, there's just oxygen diffusers, algae terrariums. He built tons of these everywhere, but they don't actually do anything at this point. Nor do these algae distilleries really do anything. He also has very little in the way of water. This is basically the last of his clean water supply, and these little scraps right here, some of it I'm going to have to dig out. And this is his polluted water supply right here. Of course, naturally, it is teeming with germs. We'll get to the germ problem in a bit. He doesn't have much in the way of water to electrolyze. He also doesn't really have much in the way of renewable water. This is the only water source he's been able to find so far, this cool steam vent. It's dormant for the next 4.6 cycles, and even when it's active, it isn't going to be that impressive. This is on the net. We're looking at a steam geyser or steam vent that's going to be producing maybe 1.2 kilograms per second of water over the long term. And that just isn't enough because part of the issue as well is that he has 42 duplicants in this base. And if you kind of crank the numbers, that means we're going to need roughly 5 kilograms of water per second to make this base work. So there's a lot of people in this base and not really the resources to support them and not really the buildings to support them either. We'll get to that in a bit. But basically, no oxygen, big short-term problems with oxygen. I mean, these duplicants are on the verge of suffocation right now. By the time I got this base, actually some of them already had suffocated. Travaldo's dead. May is dead. Some of these guys are dead and buried, like Rip Ren and Rip Marie. I'm not sure if the volcano killed her or this is just, a good place to throw your dead people. But she's buried next to the volcano. That's very sweet. So no oxygen, and really no resources to make oxygen either. At the same time, we have a fairly serious food problem on the horizon. We do have about 100,000 kilocalories at the moment. But that's really only enough for about 2.5 cycles given a base of 42 duplicants. A lot of that is mush fry, which means that he probably spent the last of his water resources trying to prop up his food. That really isn't a good idea, not going to work in the long run. We're going to need to find a new source of food. Most of his farms have gone offline. He does have dirt, 40 tons of dirt, so he could grow mealwood. But his farms are all offline for a couple of reasons. The number one reason is heat. Heat is actually going to be a major issue for this farm in particular. But also, he just doesn't have an atmosphere to grow anything in, right? This is not 150 grams of atmosphere. So most of these plants are not running at the moment, right? They can't grow because there's just no air to grow them in. And he tried solving the temperature problem with these icy fans and a couple of ice makers. But that's not really going to hold things up. There's no insulation around these farms. They're in fact in thermal communication with this area right here, right? They're just exposed basically to a bunch of 40 and 45 degree stuff. This farm is pretty much done for. He built a farm over to the west He cracked into a cold biome, and the temperatures are a little bit better here. But he runs into the same problem that there is not enough atmosphere, right? All this growth is halted because there's not pressure to support there's not enough air pressure to support the plants, and so he doesn't really have anything going on over here as well. In addition to that, there's no oxygen anywhere here, and it's a fairly long distance from the main base, so it's difficult for duplicants to go out here and farm anything. I think basically this entire western part of the base is going to have to be just shut down. We're going to do some stuff in here to kind of make it livable in the future, but for now, this is not an area with a lot of resources that we care about, and it doesn't really do much. So we want to restore oxygen to the base. That probably means that we're just going to abandon a lot of this area for the moment. So food problems on the horizon. He's only got about 2 days left of food, and no food being grown, and no way to support what he's kind of been propping up his food supplies with, which is mush bars. So we have a major issue with that as well. In addition, as I mentioned a little bit previously, there's a heat issue in the base. Everything is around 40 degrees at this point. Some areas a little bit hotter, some areas a little bit cooler, 30 degrees, but pretty much all of this is not where you want things to be, because this is not at a temperature that's going to be able to support mealwood or a lot of the decor plants, or really just be that comfortable for duplicants. I think they'll be fine. I mean, as long as we don't go above 75 degrees, we should be okay, and I don't think we'll get that hot. But it's hard to make things work when everything is so hot. So he's got a major heat issue with the base. There's just thermal communication with a lot of areas he doesn't want, a lot of heat generation in areas that he doesn't want, and really nothing that's cooling down the base at this moment. So slowly, this base is just going to boil itself if left to its own devices. In addition to this, there's very serious stress problems. We see some duplicants kind of chilling out and doing fine. There's 0% stress that's decent, but there's a lot of them that are above 50% at this point and climbing because they're mourning dead friends, because they don't have oxygen to breathe, because, well, a lot of things. Number one, there's really no morale being produced at all in this base. Everybody is not having their morale needs met. Everyone is very unhappy as a result. Yeah, like, he has a 2-shift break, so he's getting +1 from that. He's getting +1 just from existing, but he thinks the base is ugly because it is, and he's going to have to go through a lot of stressful things like not having oxygen to breathe and so on and so forth, and not having the correct morale requirements met. Part of that also is just that there's really no buildings in this base, or no rooms, I should say. He has a miscellaneous room that's housing this jukebot. He's got a couple med bays, but that's basically it. There's really not much going on in terms of mess halls, bedrooms, anything of that sort. He's got his beds just kind of strewn about the base everywhere, right? He's got a bunch of them over here. He's got some more over here. Just not really great locations for beds is an issue. He also has, pretty obviously, if you look at some of these bathroom arrangements, pretty big problem with germs at this point. 3 duplicants are currently sick from slimelung. There is food poisoning kind of covering everything. His food preparation areas, his water supply, there's slimelung over here. A lot of these storage bins are just full of germs. He's basically got germs everywhere. His duplicants are going to get sick. This is not a super high priority right now, but the germ problem is quite an issue at this point. And then finally, he really doesn't have any power left at this point. There is 42 kilos of coal left, which is virtually nothing. His power grid has been failing pretty much this entire time because he's just got everything hooked up all together. This is all basically one big grid with a few things that are kind of broken off. Some of them, I think, by design. This one is separate from the rest, right? But a lot of them are when there are separations from the grid, it's really just because wires broke. It's not because he planned it that way. I don't think he planned to have this thing just not powered. It's that the wiring is such that there's just way too much power consumption to handle on this network, right? That these wires can only support 1,000 watts. And we see that this circuit, for example, and I've already been disconnecting some of this stuff. I need to unpause this just so the resources showed up. But we see 8,000 watts of consumption on this circuit. That's an issue. So he's had wire breakages and wire damage all over the place, as we can see a lot of them. quite an issue at this point. So yeah, no coal, no real way to produce power. His power system is a complete mess. We'll take a look at plumbing real quick here. There's kind of some pipe spaghetti. It looks like he had some water here that he was pumping out to his system. But there's not really much to work with in this area as well. Ventilation is also kind of a mess. He's been pumping out a lot of his CO2 in these areas, which actually has been counterproductive because he needs the CO2 for his plants to grow. But he really doesn't have much ventilation going on as well. He has some hydrogen generators up here, trying to get the hydrogen from the base and put it into these generators to try and solve some of his power problems. But that's going to actually consume a lot of power in the process because he has all these gas filters to go with his pumps. Right, if you run 3 gas pumps and 3 gas filters just to support a hydrogen generator, you're not really netting power in a big way. So, no oxygen, food problems, heat problems, stress problems, morale problems, no buildings, or no rooms set up, I should say, a bunch of useless buildings strewn about, a base layout that's just really atrocious. But you know what the worst sin of all is? And this is the thing that really makes me think that, oh, this is not the base to start with. The real, most sinful thing about this base is that it is named Planet. I mean, we could save this base, but with a name like Planet, why do we even want to try? In any case, though, I promised I'd give it a college effort. So, what are we going to do here? Well, first, we need duplicants to be able to breathe. There's no oxygen here. This is vanishingly little oxygen. We already see dead duplicants on the ground that have suffocated. We don't want more duplicants to die. I mean, I guess we kind of do, but we're going to try and avoid it. So right off the bat, I want to crack into any of these areas with polluted water, polluted oxygen, anything that we can breathe. I want to break into them and start using them, right? We need to get this stuff into our base right away. In fact, I'm going to open up one more right here. We need to start cracking into this base, these oxygen areas right away. Because we just don't have anything to breathe right now. The duplicants will literally die if we just leave them the way things are. So this area down here of polluted oxygen, I don't care if it has slimelung. I mean, they'll be dead from not breathing. We'll rather they have slimelung and live with that than just die. We need to crack into all these areas. All the water from these areas that I'm cracking into looks like it'll drain down to here or here. In fact, I can go ahead and say build a tile. Just something like right here. Set this to something like a 7. So, we are going to crack into a lot of these areas. Any little bits of oxygen I can get to, we are going to try and get to, just so that our duplicants have something, anything to breathe as they go about the work of saving this base. I'm not going to touch this water for now. That's going to be something we're going to need to work on a little bit later. I also just don't want to pump out a lot of the thermal mass of this room because we're going to need it to keep this water relatively temperate once this cool steam vent turns on. So yeah, first step, we need to get into this oxygen. We also need to fix up a lot of this power system, and I've already started on that. Basically, anything non-essential, we are going to want to separate from the power system or disable or turn off. I'm not going to use this hydrogen thing. I think it's a little bit more problem than it's worth. I have already kind of disconnected this area over here. And the idea is that I'm going to just reduce all of our power to a few simple grids. And eventually try and get those grids on coal and smart batteries. But for the meantime, because we don't have those, I'm just going to set up some quick, some hamster wheels for them to turn on and keep this stuff powered. Basically, I want to have a few oxygen diffusers online for whatever little bits of algae I'm able to get. I definitely need my electrolyzers back online. All of these carbon skimmers should be disabled. They're completely counterproductive at this point because there's no atmosphere at all. I mean, I'd prefer that these rooms were filled with carbon dioxide than filled with nothing, because at least then I wouldn't have the food issue. These plants would be growing. Turning off all these lights is important. Turning off most of this power generation, most of these microbe mushers don't do anything at this point. These electric grills don't really do anything at this point. Turning off all that, we're going to try and live off of just mealwood and mushroom as much as we can. And we're also going to dig out as much algae as we can find. So this whole strip of algae right here, little bits of algae over here, some as we crack into these areas, right? We need this algae as well to get all of our stuff online. And we're just shutting off anything unnecessary. All these pumps are unnecessary. We're deconstructing a lot of these batteries the way they won't consume power. We're going to shut off these refrigerators. Let's go ahead and disable all these buildings. The food isn't going to have a long enough time to go stale because we don't have any food, so we don't need to worry too much about that. I'll leave the research stuff up. This is one area where he's made a decent amount of progress. We see fairly good research done. I don't have access to fossil fuels, and I don't have access to some of the better wiring options, which doesn't really matter, I guess, because he doesn't have refined metal at this point. I think the things that we want to work on next in terms of research are going to be this liquid tuning, HVAC, and improved ventilation. But for the most part, we have kind of all the core stuff that we need to make this work done, right? And maybe a little extra stuff, right? We have, some nice ranching stuff done, and we have some medicine stuff done, right? There's a little bit of extra stuff that we don't quite need, but pretty much we have all the stuff that we're going to need to have access to. And yeah, in terms of heat, we'll have a big help with this carbon dioxide geyser once this turns on, if it turns on. But we're going to need to deal with that in some way as well. I think for the mid-range, what we're going to need to do is dig out more slime and then plant a bunch, probably just uproot all these buildings right here and plant a bunch of mushrooms. And that'll have to supply our base with food going forward. Mushrooms are great because they only use slime. They don't require water. They don't require dirt. We have a lot of CO2 to work with down here. So we should be able to make this work, right? Like if I just open up these areas, I should be able to get enough CO2 flooding into the base to cover our, wherever we set up our mushroom food production. And that's the plan. I have also gone ahead, let's see. Yeah, we are going to disconnect a lot of this stuff and put it on separate areas. So I want to have a dedicated power system for our water sieves over here and our pump. I want to have a dedicated power system to our electrolyzers. Right, I want to basically divide up this grid into a bunch of small grids. I think some of my divisions have already happened. I had to unpause this again because I needed to have the save file load up what resources were available so I could show you. But this, for example, I've disconnected, and we're going to disconnect a few more. So what else do I want to disconnect from the system? I don't need pretty much anything that's down here. So we can actually go ahead and disconnect all the way up to here, actually. Yeah. Let's go ahead and... Oh, this is already being deconstructed. Okay. All right, yeah, I think we're good. So let me just unpause here and take a look. Yeah, this is pretty rough. I've also gone ahead and changed all the priorities. Anything that's super unimportant, like I just don't want them using it, I've set to 1. Everything else I've set to 3. And then stuff I immediately want done, I have set to 7. So we're going to set this one to 7 because it's harvestable, but everything else we're just leaving as it is. Yeah, disable all of these carbon skimmers, get all of this done. Decor-wise, we also have a lot of work. Germ-wise, we also have a lot of work, but we need to just start off with the most critical things in our base. I don't want any of this power running at this point. Once we solve the most critical things, then we can work on other stuff. Okay. Have you guys finished all that? Suffocating, Herald, complete neural process. Where is Harold? There he is. Yeah, get out of there, Harold. Run over to there. Deeper diver's lungs, also great. Okay. I think we've done most of the stuff that I immediately wanted to do, and it's been a pretty long episode just kind of explaining all of the things that have needed to happen. So I think I'm going to cut things here. Yeah, suffocation, major issue. We need to get all of this back online right away. Power, manual generators. Copper's fine with me. Boom, boom. Jumbo battery, copper, boom. Wire, copper, up like so. Priority 7 on these. We're also going to take any manual generators we have still going, and we're going to set them to a relatively high priority. Okay. Yeah, and we're going to need to get these electrolyzers online as quickly as possible. We broke into here. That'll provide us a little bit of oxygen. We really need to get these online. What power do I have hooked up here? Basically none. Set this to a 7. Get somebody on that. Yeah, and we're going to need to set up some power over here. Power, manual generator, more copper ore. Set this bad boy down right here. Set this to a 7. Whew boy, this is going to take some work. Get these electrolyzers going as much as possible. Schedule-wise, we are also due to sleep soon. I've kind of moved the schedule around to give them more downtime morale. Try and cheese the system a little bit that way to reduce the stress. Yeah, these suffocation alarms are going to be crazy. Starvation. Yeah, give me this algae. Get things going. I need these things going yesterday. No research focus is fine. I definitely don't want these on at this point. Okay. I think we're ready to pause here and come back with sort of the next episode where we try and tackle more of the problems that we have going on here. Yeah. Alright. Let's cut things here. This is a good introductory episode to see what was going wrong, and I'll see you guys next time.